Hi, fourth grade. How are you? I miss you all a lot. Um, Hope you all are doing well and you're staying active and you're not being too bored. Um, I've been doing pretty well as long as we can get outside each day. I think we're not going too stir crazy. So I'm ready for some warm weather. But I miss you all so much. But today we are going to do our next activity. Not really a pre-writing activity, more of a review, but it's definitely going to help you get started and continue working on your characters for your kindness story, which I am so excited and I can't wait to start hearing from you of what your amazing stories are going to be. So in your take-home packet that your parents brought home with you, you should have a paper that looks like this. It's called Punctuating Dialogue Center. This is a little quick review for us to go through together. I don't think dialogue is something that's new to you. I know you've practiced it in third grade, and I know you might have been introduced to it in second grade. So this is a review, but since we're not together and you're definitely going to be adding dialogue in your stories, I just want to go through step by step so you know exactly what I'm looking for with your stories, okay? So first, before we get started, let's just talk about what dialogue is and how you know you see dialogue in a story. So dialogue is when characters are speaking and it's the exact words that are coming out of their mouth in a story. By the way, I'm in my basement right now. This is the most private and quiet place in my house. So that's why, I think my basement's kind of dark and scary, but it's quiet. So I'm away from my noisy kids right now because if I was upstairs, they would not let me make a video. So that's where I am, in case you were wondering. I might be doing a lot of videos down here. Will just depend what time of day it is and where my kids are and stuff like that. So anyway, back to our lesson. So dialogue is when the author is telling you the exact words that are coming out of a person's mouth and what they're saying. And there are a lot of good clues that authors use to let their reader know that someone's talking. And one good clue is that the author puts quotation marks around the exact words that the character is saying. So that's the first clue. And then another good clue that there's dialogue is by something called a dialogue tag, and we're going to take some time to talk about that today. So like I said, you need dialogue in your kindness story because you're going to have characters speaking to each other. If you had a story with just one character, then there wouldn't be a whole lot of dialogue. But since you have to have at least three, there's going to be people talking back and forth to each other. So dialogue is something that you need in your story. So we're going to practice that today. So dialogue is made up of two parts. You have to have two parts to dialogue. The first is what's around the quotation marks. So those are the words that are being said by the character. And then the second thing that you need is something called a dialogue tag. And I mentioned that a little bit ago. A dialogue tag is what the author uses to let the reader know who just said those words. So, if I was talking, then it would say, Mrs. Smith said, or Mrs. Smith cried, Mrs. Smith explained. That is the dialogue tag. So you need both parts. You need the dialogue, the words that's actually being said, and then who said it. So the dialogue tag, okay? So we're gonna practice just mostly today with punctuation because punctuation and dialogue can get a little tricky. And sometimes it can mess people up and a lot of people do it incorrectly. So I want to make sure that you understand it and that you're doing it correctly when you are writing your story, okay? So what I want you to do, this paper right here, you're going to do this with me right now, okay? So if you don't have it with you, I want you to get it. And if it's not a good time to do this with me, then I want you to stop the video, push pause, go get it, or stop it, stop the video, finish whatever you're doing. Maybe you're not quite ready, and then come back with me when you are, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and get started. You are gonna need a writing utensil. I'm gonna use a red Sharpie, because that way you all can see it on the video. But you can use a pen, pencil, marker, whatever you have. Doesn't matter to me, okay? So this paper, let's look at the first one right here. So you'll notice right here that just the dialogue is included. There's no dialogue tags on this. So there's nothing that says Mrs. Smith said, Mrs. Smith explained. We're going to add that together, okay? I'm going to walk you through the steps of how to write good dialogue in your story. The first thing you have to do is you have to decide what type of sentence the dialogue is. So do you remember the 4 types of sentences? I hope you're saying yes right now. So let's go through them together. There's declarative, there's imperative, there's interrogative, and there's exclamatory. Any order. Did you say those 4? I hope you did. I hope you're saying yes right now. Make me proud. Okay. So depending on what type of sentence it is, it has to have a certain punctuation after the dialogue. And we're going to practice that together right now. Okay. So the first sentence, if you're looking at it, says, "Did you study for the test today?" So those are words being spoken out of someone's mouth. We have to add some details and some things to it to make it dialogue. Okay. So the first question is, what kind of sentence is that? So I see it starts with the word did, which is a good clue. So this is what kind of sentence is it? If you said interrogative, you are correct. Very good job. Interrogative ends with what kind of punctuation? Question mark. Good job. So I want you to go ahead and put your question mark right after the word today. Just like that. Okay? Since this is what something is saying, now we're going to add the quotation marks around it. So you're going to put quotation marks in front of the word did, almost like the quotations are giving it a hug, and I'll show you mine in a second. And then you're going to put your quotations right after the question mark. So it should look just like this. So your quotations right before did, right after the quote, what's that called? Question mark right there. Okay. So when your reader reads that, they'll know, oh, someone's asking the question, did you study for the test today? So now we need to add the dialogue tag. Okay. Did you study for the test today? You can think of whatever person you want. Did you study for the test today? That sounds like something Mrs. Buck would say. So I'm going to have Mrs. Buck be my first dialogue speaker. And one thing I want you to try and do is your dialogue tags don't have to be Mrs. Buck said, Mrs. Smith said, Miss Otten said, Mr. Steffens said, Elmo said, Waldo said, I don't care. Try to have your dialogue tag match the emotion of your dialogue. So since this is a question, maybe a dialogue tag that we could do instead of using said would be Mrs. Buck asked. Mrs. Buck wondered. That would be a good one. Mrs. Buck pondered. It's a fancy word right there. Okay, so go ahead. It doesn't have to be Mrs. Buck. It could be whoever you want. I'm just adding her. I kind of miss her. I haven't seen her in a while. So did you study for the test today? Asked Mrs. Buck. After the dialogue tag, that is when you will put your period. Okay, so that's what mine looks like. And you can put Mrs. Buck asked, that's fine. Pretty much whatever dialogue tag you use, it doesn't matter if it comes before or after the person, it usually makes sense either way. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. It says, I am going to go camping this weekend with my friends. So first, what kind of sentence is it? I am going to go camping this weekend with my friends. If you said declarative, you are correct. Very good job. I hope you all are making me proud. Now, a declarative sentence in dialogue is a little tricky. It does not have a period right after the dialogue. Do you know what it is? It's a comma. Okay, so right after friends, you're going to put a comma. And I'll explain why in a second. Where is it? Just like that. Okay. Next, add those quotation marks. So your reader knows someone's talking. So right before I and right after friends, make sure that comma is inside the quotation marks. Okay. So since this is a declarative sentence, it's fine to say said so-and-so. That's a completely fine dialogue tag to have for a declarative sentence. Who would say this? I'm just trying to think of people. My brother Phil, he likes to go camping. He would probably say this. So I'm going to say, I'm going to go camping this weekend with my friends, said Phil. And then you add your period after the whole dialogue tag. Okay, I know it's squished. You're going to have to, I had to go down to that line right here. Okay, so declarative sentences, comma, and then your dialogue tag, the final period goes after that dialogue tag. Okay, let's move on to the next one. It says, Mom, the baby won't stop crying. So this, I feel like, could be one of two sentence types. So it could be a declarative sentence, simple statement, or, you know, if this is a really annoyed person and that baby just won't stop crying, they might say, Mom, the baby won't stop crying, which would make it more of an exclamatory sentence. So since we've already done a declarative sentence, let's change it up and make this one an exclamatory. Okay, so right after crying, exclamatory sentences end with a exclamation point. Good job. I know you said it out loud with me. Okay. Exclamation mark right after the word crying. Next, put that dialogue, or I'm sorry, no, put the quotation marks around what's being said. So around mom, right after the exclamation point. Okay, now we add our dialogue tag. Who would say this? I feel like Olivia said this when my daughter, when Gavin was born. I'm sure she did because, you know, babies cry a whole lot. So I'm going to make Olivia be my character in this dialogue. You can make it whoever you want. And let's see, what could be a good word to match this dialogue? Could be a good dialogue tag. Olivia shouted. Shouted's a good one. I'm going to do that. So I'm going to change it up and say Olivia. I'm going to put the name first. Olivia shouted. And then the final period at the end. Quotations, exclamation mark, quotations, dialogue tag, final period at the end. Okay? All right, we're going to do one more together and then I'll let you do the other one on your own if you're still staying with me. I hope you are. So the next one, I got an A on my math test. Good job, whoever this is. So I got an A on my math test. I feel like this could also be one of two sentences. It could be a declarative or it could be an exclamatory sentence. If I got an A on a math test, I think I would be pretty excited. So I'm going to make mine an exclamatory sentence. So let's end it with an exclamation mark. You're going to put those quotation marks around the dialogue. And let's see, who would say this? Miss Otten would probably say this. I'm going to use her because I miss her too. I haven't seen her in a long time. So, I'm going to say exclaimed, since this is an exclamatory sentence. I'm going to say Miss Otten exclaimed. I know a lot of you out there are good at math, so you should add your name here. Okay, so quotation marks, dialogue, punctuation. In this case, it's a exclamation point, closing dialogue, and then your dialogue tag with your final period at the end. Okay, so I'm going to do the last one. I want you to go ahead and do the last one yourself, and then we'll kind of see what we all came up with. So take a minute, do the last one. Okay, if you're not finished yet, pause the video until you are, but I'm gonna go ahead and tell you what I did. So I studied for my math test for 3 days. So I decided that sentence was a declarative sentence. It's a statement. So you should have ended it with a comma, because remember, declarative sentences keep going because that final period tells you when it's all over. So you should have a comma right after the word days with your quotation marks at the beginning of I, at the end of days. And then this is something I would say. I would have to study for a math test for 3 days. You all know I'm not a math person. So the character is me, Mrs. Smith, and I complained when I said it. I studied for my math test for 3 days. I would have to complain to say that. So this is what the final dialogue for me looks like. So check yourselves. It doesn't have to, this part of course doesn't have to match, but your quotation marks should be in the right spot. You should have a comma after the word days, and then your dialogue tag, final period at the end. Okay, so just some things to remember when you are writing your dialogue. So of course you're going to be creating the dialogue that characters will say. So you first have to think, how are they saying it? Is it a declarative sentence? Is it an interrogative sentence, imperative, exclamatory? And make sure you have the correct punctuation after that dialogue. Okay, and then do it just like we did. Put those quotation marks around what the character said, and then add that dialogue tag so your reader knows who said those words. Then your final period at the end of the whole dialogue sentence. Okay. I have some notes here. I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. So when you're writing, so this is something that might be new to you when you're writing dialogue. So if you have characters that are having a conversation and one character's talking and then another character says something and then they're just kind of going back and forth and you have a lot of dialogue, each time a new character speaks, you have to start a new paragraph. So when you have conversations happening in stories, a lot of times pages are just taken up by dialogue, because that's another clue that the author does for the reader. So the reader knows that another person is talking. It's a whole new paragraph goes on the next line, and it just keeps going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Okay. But if one person is talking, but if they're saying multiple sentences, you can just keep those quotation marks going for that character. Okay. So this was just some practice. If you have any questions, what I want you to do is comment on this video down at the bottom. That way your comments go direct, or your questions go directly towards me and I can answer them for you. And what I want you all to do, so this was your writing activity for the day. We did it together. But one thing I want you to do today when you're finished is I want you to open up your 5-subject notebook and go to those, go to the extra section that you've been putting your graphic organizers in. And I want you to think about each of your characters and write maybe 2 or 3 lines of dialogue that you think they are going to say. It doesn't have to go in your story, but it's also just a way for you to start getting to know your characters a little bit more. Think about what kinds of things are they going to say? Are they a question asker? Are they, are they really emotional? Are they going to have a lot of exclamatory sentences? So just go to your notebook, just maybe on each page, write your character's name, write down maybe 2 or 3 dialogue sentences that you think they will say, and then just keep going, go through all your characters. So take a little extra time. That's another brainstorming activity that you could do for your characters, just so you can kind of get to know them. And this is also good practice to make sure you're doing the correct punctuation, putting the quotation marks where they go, and working on those dialogue tags. If you're having trouble thinking of dialogue tags and words that you can use instead of just said all the time, you can Google words to use instead of said, and there are lists and lists and lists that you will see. And as long as the dialogue tag matches the emotion of the character, you can change it up and use some new dialogue tags. Just make sure first you know what it means too, and how that character would be talking. So use that if you feel like you just need a refresher, you're not really familiar. Also, you have Wonder Home with you. I made sure that was with all of your supplies. Go through and just kind of look at dialogue in Wonder for maybe a couple minutes today and see how the author uses certain dialogue tags. And you can notice how the characters start a new paragraph and a new line each time someone new speaks. So that's something that I want you to do today too, okay? So that's it. Also, if you have any questions, there was a paper that I sent home. It's the rules for editing dialogue in your writing. Mine's 2 pages, but I'm pretty sure yours is front and back. So if you have a question, or if you're not exactly sure, if you forget, or if you're writing and you're like, oh, I forget what we do here, this is a good go-to paper since we're not together, for you to kind of just read through and see what you're supposed to do on things, okay? And of course, your people at home can help you also. You can also ask me a question in the comments. I don't think you'll be able to glue this into your notebook because yours is front and back. So you keep this in your yellow folder when you're finished with it. This paper, if you want to glue it into your 5-subject notebook with all your other graphic organizers, you can. You'll have to trim just around what you've written so it fits. If you don't want to glue it in, that's fine. You can recycle this paper. It was just practice, okay? So tomorrow, I am going to make a new video. We're going to start planning and mapping out our stories. And I forgot to tell you in my first 2 videos that I'm writing a kindness story too. So I've been taking some time to develop some characters and thinking about an act of kindness that I'm going to write about. So I forgot to share that with you, which I kind of feel like is kind of important for you to know. So we'll be using mine as an example. I'm going to be sharing my story with you in a couple of days. And I'm really excited to hear your stories and to see everything that you've been working on. It's kind of like killing me not to know what you've been working on, but you all have been sending some good questions. Some parents have emailed me with some ideas that you have. So I can't tell you how much I miss you all. I really do. It's starting to get boring. I don't like talking to my computer. I can't see anyone. No one's raising their hand. I can't. It's crazy. Okay. So I will see you all tomorrow. Good luck writing your dialogue. If you have any questions, comment on the video or refer to the rules for editing dialogue in your writing paper. And I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.